It's a special Marshall Thursday on Locked On Penguins as Jesse Marshall is going to talk all things Penguins with me right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodies. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodies. Usually I'm joined by Patrick Damp, but we got hit by some nasty storms on Tuesday. He's still without power. He's also at work right now, so he won't be joining us for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast, but don't worry, people. Patrick Damp will be back for Friday, and then he'll be back all of next week as well. But I am joined today by special guest Jesse Marshall. He's been on throughout the season. We try to do this once a week, but sometimes some other things get in the way. So Jesse, really appreciate you coming back this week. And it's been really busy so far in Penguins land.
Yeah, busy off season despite not being in the playoffs, and no shortage of discussion topics, I'm sure.
100%. And with that, did want to say thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, this episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. So Jesse, obviously the big news of the week came on Monday morning, right around 9 a.m. as the Penguins parted ways with Mike Sullivan, though when you watched Kyle Dubas' press conference, he kind of fired him. That's the vibe that Pat and I got. You obviously had a lot of thoughts about this on Twitter, and I wanted to get your thoughts here. What did you think of the decision to let go of Mike Sullivan, and did you think it was time for the Penguins to do that?
I mean, I would say probably a little bit shocked by it just based off of the rhetoric. I mean, shame on any of us for listening to anything any general manager says in a press conference ever, because it's always, veiled in a sliver of truth. But you got the sense anyway, right, that they seem to think that, at least for now, there was some kind of marriage between the coach and the management staff. I think that the turn probably, if I had to guess, and I don't know this, I'm just speculating at best. I just don't know what the disconnect was and what changed, right? I mean, I think it was time for the Penguins to move on from Mike Sullivan for a number of reasons, most notably their performance, and the lack of playoff performance they've had over the last couple of years. I mean, roster stuff aside, I mean, there's decision-making processes that he's gone through with who gets on the ice that I think everyone's been frustrated with. There's been decision-making, around different positions, I think that people have been frustrated with. I don't think the system is a shoe that fits anymore, given the makeup of the team. But I just wonder what the precipitating event was that caused the divorce. I think that's probably the question we'll all be left with. There was some kind of weird, speculation that I think for me, it's just that the Penguins are going to stink. I mean, they're about to go into a period where they're not good. They already are there, right? Despite how long they've wanted to avoid that. But I think now that it's going to be more intentional to some extent. And I just think Mike Sullivan, from his perspective, probably thinks, and I'm channeling him for a minute, but probably thinks he's in the prime of his coaching career.
Right.
This is as good as it's going to get for him. So, the route to the Penguins being a Stanley Cup contender is nowhere in sight right now. Does he want to, sludge through that? And there were people that came out with word, well, he had a list of demands. I don't know that he had a list of demands. I think demands is the wrong word. I think there was a philosophical disagreement between both parties in which direction they should probably be going. And I think at the end of the day, that is ultimately what facilitated the divorce.
That's what Pat and I were kind of thinking about, because it seemed like to us, and we were just kind of speculating about it, that Mike Sullivan maybe wanted them to really, really mobilize this summer and try to get back to the playoffs maybe this year. And Kyle Dubas was kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to make the playoffs for 1 year and then just go back to missing the playoffs for 2 to 3 to 4 years in a row. I want to do this right. And with that, I don't think we're going to be that good this year. I'm probably looking towards 2026, maybe 2027. And then maybe Mike was like, okay, well, I get what you're saying. I think I want to go to a situation where I can win right now. So I think that's something that may have been a disagreement between the two parties. Again, Pat and I were just kind of speculating on that, but it sounds like it could have been maybe something like that. And with that, Jesse, what type of coach do you think the Penguins will go for in this search? I know it's very early. Kyle Dubas said it's going to take probably at least a month to name a new head coach, but do you see this becoming someone who is going to be a first-time NHL head coach, something else? Like, what's on your mind about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we really can only go off of what Dubas has said so far, which, I think from if we parse through his words, it's that it's not going to be a pick off of the carousel. John Tortorella is not going to be the next head coach of the Penguins, or like Peter Laviolette, or any of these like traditional quote unquote style names. I think now, again, I did just say a couple of minutes ago that listening to anything a general manager says in a press conference, do at your own risk. So who knows how much truth there is to the stuff that he had to say this week, or if he was just posturing. But you kind of got the sense anyway that it was going to be a forward thinking, type of a coach. Look, the reality is the name everybody wants to know about is David Carl,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it was doing. I don't see any reason why David Carl would want this job. He's already he's put the Blackhawks off already. I mean, people could say that, the ability to coach Sidney Crosby is a reason. I'm sure. Yeah, I'll give you that. Fine. But he's looking for success at a team level. And look, and I don't think he's a really good forward-thinking coach. I don't think he's reinvented the wheel. Like, I don't think Denver plays that style of hockey no one's ever seen before. He just seems to be someone who has a very sensible understanding of how to organize his team best based on the skill sets that they have available. So I think he's waiting for the right moment, and I don't think a rebuilding Penguins team in the twilight of Sidney Crosby's career is going to scream right moment to him. So I don't want to deflate everyone's hope balloon around David Carl. I don't, that to me would be a shock. A name that I mentioned on the Fan the other day, and it's come up a couple times, is Todd Nelson.
Yeah.
I also would think that the Washington Capitals as a franchise are probably going to want to do whatever they can to hang on to him, especially not let him go to Pittsburgh. So whether that be create an assistant position for him somewhere, or what, I don't know what the situation is, but I mean, Hershey's a great team, right? And he's not an old retread, right? He's not had NHL coaching experience before, but he runs a really good organization. I mean, you can perennially count on the Bears being a tough out and a good hockey team, regardless of the circumstances around what's happening with the Capitals and where their roster is. So that's a great compliment to him. I think it's names like that, right? Like, and if you're looking for NHL, like, I don't want to say retreads, quote unquote, right? But like, maybe like is a Jay Woodcroft a name that comes up? Like,
I mentioned him earlier this week.
I thought
not
Kirk
really a
McDonald.
retread. He's had one gig, but I don't really classify him in the same category as like a Laviolette or a Tortorella, though.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's what I think will happen. I think whatever the case is, at least for me, the pressure's off. This doesn't have to be the guy. You don't need to solve, it's not like the pressure's on to win a cup tomorrow and the next pick has to be the right one. You're going to go through a rebuild. I think the preference for me is, how is this coach with younger players, right? Like, how does that work? Like, what's his developmental skills like? And you have to have a balance, right? Because you still have a roster full of guys that have been there, done that. So it can't all be focused on youth. There's got to be a balance, but who fits that bill, right? I jokingly said Bruce Boudreau would like be the perfect guy if he was like 30 years younger and had less experience. You know what I mean? Because he sort of has that ability, I think, to deal with both sides of the coin in terms of youth and veteranship. But yeah, I think it'll be exciting to see. But I don't, I think it's interesting in that we haven't seen this happen in Pittsburgh in a while, and the last time we did, it came with the expectation of win now. And, years later now, I think the hire is going to be, surrounded with a much different expectation.
Right. And I've also seen David Quinn thrown out there a lot. Jesse, personally, I don't really see it. I guess, like, if you really, really want to tank the next year or two, that's really the only way you could, I guess, sell that. But I'm not sure they're really going to go down like that path, like where they're going to be like, I don't know, Sharks or Chicago level bad next year. I
Yeah.
don't really think that's on the agenda. So I guess some of the David Quinn talk, man, I just don't see it.
I think he might follow Mike Sullivan.
Good call.
I mean, I think that's kind of a likely scenario to me right now. And I don't. He's just. I view him as like an albatross to this staff, right? Like he's been here for a very short amount of time, but is a Boston guy, and seemed to mesh well with Sullivan. I don't know that he's, head. I don't want to. It sounds like an insult to say this, but I don't know that right now he's head coach material. He seems like a good assistant, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dubas is interested in having a fresh staff here. So I don't think he'll be in the running. Yeah, I would be shocked by that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think that would do it for this first segment of today's episode. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to discuss a little bit more about the coaching stuff and try to get a little bit of draft talk in for Jesse, because this is the most prepared I've ever seen him for an NHL draft. And I'm really excited to pick his brain a little bit, because the draft lottery, people, it's coming up next week. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodies, joined today by special guest Jesse Marshall. Remember, people, Patrick Damp, my co-host, he'll be back on Friday. He's still without power right now. He's at work. He would not be available till 3 o'clock, so we wanted to get Jesse on when he was available during his very busy day at work. But Jesse, something that I discussed earlier this week during one of our episodes was that during the presser, Kyle Dubas hinted that Andy Chiodo, Mike Vellucci, and Ty Hennis, their contracts are set to expire. They're free to explore other opportunities. I don't see that being talked about enough. I touched on it for a couple of seconds during one of the episodes, because I think getting a new goaltender coach is very high on the priority list for this staff, just because you need that coach to really do a good job with the development of Blomqvist and Murashov. Chiodo just had not been doing that good of a job these last few years. The goaltending has been really bad also these last few years. And you have to get the development of Sergei Murashov right. So I feel like that is a very, and I mean a very crucial hire. And then for Vellucci, penalty kill also has to be much better. But really wanted to pick your brain on the potential Chiodo replacement, because I know getting the head coach, that's the biggest priority. Getting his assistants, that's also high up there. But getting a legit goaltending coach that can help these two young goalies, that's so crucial for this offseason, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't have any insight into who. I don't know. I'm very little into the world of goalie coaches. I mean, I would agree with the sentiment that, I think that the big thing that you could say, and like many people have pointed this out already on a number of platforms, but the lack of experience, from Chiodo's, like, I don't think he's really had a job in this space before this, right?
Right.
Like, he's obviously a goalie, right? Like, he has like played in the NHL, so like you that's obvious. Like, not that aside, like I don't know that he has a wide breadth of experience. I mean, I think it's just at the end of the day, like there are still remnants of like the former regime that are in the organization that haven't been cleaned out yet, that are still ongoing, right? Like, Katarina Wu, right, is not with the org anymore, right? Like she was a Hextall hire, right? There's been changes in the ops space like that. So I think it's just a changeover. I think Kyle Dubas is just getting his people in, and is finalizing more or less his hierarchy, if you will, of what he wants. But yeah, I mean, I don't think anything can be done with Tristan Jarry. I don't think a new goalie coach helps him much. And, dude, here's the thing. I've been looking for this for weeks and I can't find it anywhere. And when the Pens blog closed and changed servers a couple times, like a lot of stuff got wiped. So this article I wrote was on like somewhere and I'm trying to find it in the Wayback Machine. But Tristan Jarry, people don't know this. The school that he went to in junior when he played for the Oil Kings was the same school Laurent Brossoit went to. All right. And I remember, and I wrote an article about, and again, this is not so long ago, but I've had a child between now and then. So anything like that, excess information just gets wiped out. It was unique. And I'm trying to be like careful with my words because I don't want to misquote. It was a unique school that taught the position in an unconventional way, right? And at the time, it was like this new flavor of the week thing that people thought was going to catch on and become bigger, and it didn't. And I'm not even sure now of like anyone that's still in that pathway. But the reason I bring this up is like I sometimes wonder about it. I think about that all the time, right? And it was all based on angular focus and neck craning. Like I just specifically remember it was vision, like peripheral vision, neck craning, like posture based. And I wish I could find it. Maybe I'll dig it up one day. But the reason I bring this up is like, how does is it impacting him now? Is it harder? And I don't know the answer to this. Is it harder for a goalie coach that's traditional to come in and like give a guy like the Men in Black pen that erases their memory, like so they could start over again? Like, is it hurting him? I don't know the answers to those questions, but I always think about it because like, if it was quote unquote non-traditional, like, is it difficult? Does it make it harder for him to be coached? Right? Like, is someone not familiar with that theory or that approach going to have a more difficult time articulating their thoughts to him? But let's be clear, like what you saw at the end of the year was why I wanted everyone pumping the brakes on Sergei Murashov. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he was awful for Wheeling and for Wilkes-Barre. Like, he wasn't great. Right. And like the mystique, if you will, was not there. Like that sort of like unconscious effort level that he was giving, where it looked like it was all automatic. Like the warts I've been telling you about showed up. Right. So again, I just mentioned this because not to say that he's a bad prospect or like kill people's vibes, but like this goaltending development is a roller coaster more than any other position. And you can't get too high and you can't get too low with what's happening. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. And the worst thing that you can do, in my opinion, is smash the accelerator pedal and shove somebody upwards before they're ready to get there. Because that is the kind of psyche damaging stuff that ruins people's ability to get it back ever, right? Like it's a bizarre mental position that it's a guy against himself more often than not. Right? Like it's someone fighting with themselves. Like it wasn't that long ago, guys, that Marc-Andre Fleury like got a sports psychologist in this city, right? Yep. Like, lest we forget. So I just mentioned it because yes, you're right, Hunter, and I've now gone on a really longer diatribe than I expected to, but you're correct. And I would say you're correct because of the youth. I'm less concerned about the upswing of that and like the upstream flow as I am like Blomqvist, Murashov, like getting those guys straightened out, if you will.
Right. They just can't rush the development of this kid. He has all the talent in the world. You're right. Some of the warts did show up, but I also will say, and Pat and I were discussing this when we were really following the runs here, Murashov was not getting any help in Wheeling.
No, Wheeling didn't score a goal for the first 2 games of that series.
He got no help. He was out to dry. He was being left out to dry, almost every game that he started for them. It was really sad.
Yeah, I mean, the playoff experience organizationally was horrible for this whole organization, top to bottom. It was bad. Like the whole, and I've said this before, I'm not excuse making. I just objectively, even if Wilkes-Barre wasn't in the playoffs, I would still hate the best of 3 format in the first round. I just hate it. Hockey is not conducive to that. That is as stupid to me as having a single elimination tournament. Because momentum doesn't work that way. And the first game, like, look, hey, Lehigh Valley went on. They felt good talking smack in the room because that was a trial by fire for a lot of really young players. They got their first taste of professional playoff hockey. And I know that like Lehigh had some players that were in that bucket too. But Wilkes-Barre took to it a little bit slower than they did.
Yeah, I agree with that. They got blown out in the first game. You had Lehigh Valley talking all bunch of smack going into game two. I actually thought Wilkes-Barre played well in game two. Harrison Brunick, Jesse, had a great snipe in the third period.
Snipe, yeah.
They just couldn't hold the lead, which was unfortunate. Also really stunk that we couldn't get to see Rucker McGorty in the playoffs, but he was still great down the stretch for the main squad. And Pat and I both expect him and Billy Koivunen to make the team next year. I think they are both ready at this point. Real quickly here before we go to the final segment, discuss some playoff talk. Got to get your thoughts on a little bit of this draft class. I've been putting together my top 10 for this draft, my annual Penguins draft board. I am very much a Eklund over Frondell person. I think it's close. I understand why people put Frondell over Eklund, but I am going with Eklund just because I think he is the better all-around player. He is a better playmaker, and I really love his hand-eye coordination. For someone who is so small, Jesse, he sure loves going around the net and beating up on all these big adults around him. I absolutely love it. But in your mind, who are some prospects that are total Kyle Dubas, Wes Clark targets in the first round? I have a couple in mind, but I wanted to see what yours are in mind that you think, oh yeah, Kyle Dubas and Wes Clark, they're definitely going to look to draft maybe some of these guys with whatever pick they get in the top 10.
I mean, first of all, you're stealing my Eklund Frondell shtick. I'm beating the hell out of that drum for quite some time. And it's not that I dislike Anton Frondell. That's not the case at all. I mean, I think like if you're grading releases among draft eligible players, like easy top 3 probably for me.
The one-timer is disgusting.
I don't have like a list of prototypes for Wes Clark and Kyle Dubas, but what you can do is follow the breadcrumbs on where they've been, right? Which I think is an easier thing to find sometimes, is where have they been spending their time. They've spent a lot of time in Brantford with Jake O'Brien. I mean, I know that for a fact. That's been a big in-person space for them. I've had people in that area tell me that the Penguins have basically had a nonstop constant presence in that arena. So I think that, with the slide to 9, that's probably a more likely outcome. I think is becoming a more likely outcome, is I think that there's this, and I think it's stupid, by the way. I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying it's stupid. There's this weirdo, bizarre question now about like Jake O'Brien's, like, for lack of a better term, like ceiling. And people are starting to say like, oh, well, he's actually going to be a bottom 6 two-way guy. And I'm like, if you watch him and come away with that impression, God bless you. And I will agree to disagree, because I have never seen a bottom 6 two-way center with hands like that ever in my life. There's never been one. Yeah. So anyway, that's one. They obviously went to Sweden, right? Like they went and physically saw Frondell and Eklund in person, who, by the way, that series just ended. Frondell now is at the U18. So if you have an interest in the draft and you want to watch more of him, you can do that. Along with several other high-profile prospects for Sweden this year and next year in the U18 that is continuing. So that's one. I think the Swedes are definitely in play, and it's a trope, so I hate to say it because people are going to laugh at me, but like, traditionally speaking, Dubas does love his greyhounds. That's his group, right? That's like his roots. And there's one specifically that I wouldn't particularly be upset about if they took, and that's Brady Martin. Fun stat for you: he had the most completed dangles of any forward, including Michael Misa, in the CHL this year. I think that the fact that he's so physical and so committed to defense and so high energy the basement on him is like the first floor. Like the bare minimum, like you draft him, you're getting a guy who can contribute to your fourth line in 3-4 years, like bare minimum, right? So like knowing that is a pretty good feeling, right? Knowing, saying like, hey, the basement for this guy is playable, right? Is a playable basement, and there may be a higher ceiling based on some of the stuff we're seeing him do on video. He's having a phenomenal worlds. Stock's increasing. So those are some names that I think are sneaking around, as far as, like I said, if you follow the breadcrumb trail in terms of where they have spent their time, that's where they're spending their time. So I think any of the aforementioned, I'm going to exclude Frondell, because if he fell to the Penguins at 9, I would eat my shoe on film on the show. I know my camera's not working today. I would eat my shoe on your show. I just don't think there's any way that he would slide down that far, because again, size. Eklund. I'm the conductor of the draft Eklund train and have been for months. He'll get less hype around him because of his size. Like, the funniest thing in the world to me is when people tweet me and say, Eklund, look at his size. We don't need another soft European perimeter player. And I'm like, you want to watch videos I have of him standing over adult men that he has put 3 feet into the earth? Like, he is destroying grown humans. I don't want to hear anything. He might be 5'8", but he's built like a brick shit house.
Yes.
There's just no two ways about it. There's not an ounce of fat on that person's body. I don't even think he has muscle. He's just made of like a hard, like, stone. Like, he's just built out of like rock. But anyway, that's where I'm at. And then I'm going to throw this in. I get flamed for this a lot. People love to chirp me for it. I think I've only been proven correct as the playoffs have gone on. But Kayshawn Aitchison is one of my favorite prospects to watch. His fun rating is through the roof. I think that there's an incorrect consensus from people that say, oh, well, he's just a big hitting defenseman that has a booming shot, and that's all he is. And I don't know that those people are watching the same games I'm watching, because he's impacting the game in every single zone that he's in. Defensive zone, neutral zone. You find him between the dots, between the circles in the offensive zone, just sitting in the slot waiting for an opportunity, like back in the back door, carrying the puck up ice. I don't know what's going to happen with that Rangers pick. I think we're all kind of wondering, but my perfect scenario in my head is some combination of Victor Eklund and a center, or a center and Kayshawn Aitchison. Like that to me would be like my home run draft if they had 9 and 11 collectively. But I'm going to do a top 40. I'm almost done. I'm trying to get the videos all out before I do the rankings, so I could just link to the videos and the rankings. So that's why I'm waiting. But stay tuned for that too.
Yes, Jesse's draft coverage is awesome, people. And Jesse, I know you just disagree with me on this, but I'm a big Colin Potter fan. I know you don't see it a little bit, but fantastic.
To be clear, like I think he's talented, right? I just think that he relies too much on his legs, right? He's fair. So fast, right?
Oh yeah.
That speed, to me right now, this is present state, this could change, is one of the only tools he reliably and regularly uses to beat defensemen.
He reminds me of a better version of Carl Hagelin, especially with his speed.
That's not a bad comp, because Hagelin's hands weren't dirty. They were good, but they weren't dirty. And I think that's kind of where he's at. But I don't think he's got the element to Hagelin of like the physicality. Like, Hagelin was a little bit punishing, and I don't Potter has that right now. I think he gets more often than not, he's the one that's getting punished. And again, I don't want to be like, there are small forwards, like I just mentioned, Victor Eklund, who I love. It's not a small forward thing to me. It's what do they do with the size?
Right.
What do they do with the size? And does the size affect them positively or negatively as they go through their game? And for Potter, it's just like 100 miles an hour all the time. I need more variance. Like, I want to see him use more hands. I want to see him distribute the puck more. And when he gets it on his stick, he's got one speed. right? And it's ahead, like wide, so I don't hate the player. I just probably will have him ranked a little bit lower than some other people. Well, I think he'll probably, he's definitely going to be in my top 20. There's no question about that. But I have him more of probably more of an 18 to 20 guy.
Hey, and then finally, man, my boy Ben Kindle. I have him right in my 10th spot right now. I love him, man. I could watch Ben Kindle play all day, has speed for days, great motor, great release, really good at winning the one-on-one battles. If the Rangers give the Penguins that pick and it's a number 11 and Ben Kindle is there, Jesse, and say with the 9th pick or something, Eklund falls to them and they take him, and at 11, Ben Kindle's there. If I'm Kyle Dubas and Wes Clark, I might roll the dice and take Ben Kindle. I'm a really big fan.
I don't think it's an out of line spot for them to take that shot. Like, especially if they have 11, right? If they have 11, I feel a lot better. I mean, it sounds crazy to say it's only 2 spots, but it makes a difference. Someone said something. So let me just say first that like putting together Ben Kindle's tape was some of the most fun that I had. Like in this whole draft, I've done 18 mixtapes so far. That one goes top 3 for like, I think goes Carbonneau, maybe Kindle second. Carbonneau is the most fun, hands down. But someone said something that so we know he's got disgusting hands, right? He's got he's unbelievable participant defensively. But someone said something to me that resonated, and this is a professional scout that said this. I've seen so many Ben Kindles come through the CHL and not go to the NHL. Like that exact prototype of player seems to be one that excels a ton in their CHL environment, and then they lose it at the next level. That's the big question, is like, what happens next for Ben Kindle? Because he's not necessarily, for me, like, I don't view him as a third line grinding out, wing. I don't think that's it. I think it's like a Daniel Sprong situation, right? It could go that way, right? It could go that way. Like what happens next is super important. There's more risk with that pick for me than there are some other ones in that area, but it's just because I have a really hard time saying like, who is this player at the next level? Like, what do I project Ben Kindle to? Like, well, it's not Braden Point, right? Like he's not that, right? Like we can't go that far, right? No. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's like that quad A space that makes me nervous. But again, like I would argue that he's more technically talented than a lot of guys I've watched. Not forget this class, like over the years that fall into that category of like guys that have tried and failed and have the same skill set. They weren't doing some of the stuff that he's doing, and they weren't half as good as he is defensively. So he's got that going for him. I question, what does the future hold for him? Like, what does he turn into later? I don't know the answer to that right now.
No, that's a very fair take. And hey, Jesse, we could probably keep going for 2 hours when it comes to draft stuff, especially with how many mixtapes, you've had, how many players you've scouted, your top 40s coming out. We'll have to bring you on, especially as the draft gets closer, because we're going to have you on to discuss, a whole bunch of other targets the Penguins could look at. Again, I'm getting closer to finishing my Penguin specific board, but still not done yet. And hey, I still got plenty of time, but hey, really appreciate you talking about the draft here, but that'll do it for the second segment. Coming up here to end the show, we're going to do a little bit of Stanley Cup playoff talk, because the first round's just about over, and there have been some really good series, and then there have also been some duds, like the Battle of Florida. I tweeted about it last night. Can't believe how much of a dud that was. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about our final sponsor, and that is Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports, College Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On and get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controllers required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube third generation. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodies, joined by special guest Jesse Marshall. And Jesse, we'll go rapid fire here. I can't believe how much of a dud the Battle of Florida was this year. And I thought it was a dud last year. I knew Florida was the better team. I came into this year thinking, Not sure if Florida's fully healthy. I didn't like the way they were playing down the stretch. I like the way Tampa's going. This is a very good Tampa Bay team, probably the best team they've had since they won their back-to-back cups. And then the Panthers get healthy and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to go back to what we did last year. And they took an absolute dump on this elite Lightning team. I think when this team is humming like this, they're the best team in the East. And as of right now, I think they probably will come out of the East if they keep playing like this. The only question now I have is, are they going to be too gassed coming out of the playoffs, considering how much hockey they have played these last few years? You saw Washington advance last night. I thought the Habs gave them a pretty good fight in those 5 games, and I thought the Habs exceeded expectations, but Washington, their goaltending and their finishing continues to be too much. But I do want to see if Carolina can beat them in a 7-game series. I think the Canes have what it takes. I think they can be stingy enough, but I'm still curious to see if Logan Thompson can keep up that elite form that we saw against Montreal. The Dallas-Colorado series has been fantastic, a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Heck, the Minnesota-Vegas series has been a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. Connor Hellebuck has not been beating the big game allegations so far in this series, but Winnipeg is up 3-2. But those are just some of my early thoughts about the first round, even though it's almost at an end here. What are some of your thoughts so far, Jesse, about the playoffs?
Florida's just built for this, man.
Yeah.
Like, Paul Maurice got that group dialed in. They look great. I really thought Tampa was going to be a tougher out. That series was very violent. This playoffs as a whole has been brutal. There's been a lot of craziness. Yeah, I can't believe the turnaround of the Caps. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, Ovechkin's just juiced up right now. I think that's going to be a good series. I think that the kryptonite, as it were, maybe of the Carolina Hurricanes, seems to be like really physical up-tempo forechecks, right? And that's kind of like the way the Caps have decided to play the game right now. So I know it'll be tougher on Carolina than we might think. That's gonna be. I think that'll be a must watch for me. I'm not gonna miss a game in that series, though. I'm very much looking forward to that. Out west, man, I really thought the Kings were gonna sweep them. I'm kind of disappointed in LA a little bit. They really let this get away from them. They had them in a chokehold, in a complete chokehold. The speaking of not beating allegations, the goaltending allegations for the Oilers had come immediately back into the frame, and it's going to look out to lunch at the beginning of that series. But they've got one of the best players in the game right now. I'm enjoying a lot of Quentin Byfield. I think he looks great. This has been a little bit of like a, everybody has that moment, Hunter, where like they put their name into the household mouths of like everyone across the league, right? Like not just your city or your region or your division, but like everyone across the league starts talking about you. And I feel like this is like that moment for Quentin Byfield.
Outside of Game 4, when he made that really,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Dallas shocks me. I thought they were dead. I really did. And the injuries I thought were just going to be like way too much for them. But I am friends with AJ out in Colorado for the Denver, who writes about the Avs. And he's like been singing their death sentence for a while. So maybe I like, didn't listen to him enough when I did my bracket. Cause I was like, you look at the state of the Stars, Landeskog's coming back. You get a huge lift from that emotionally, right? Like that should be enough, but no, Dallas is scrappy and they're not going down without a fight. And I question what happens next phase of the Avalanche's life cycle if they lose this series. What decisions get made from their front office and what happens to Bednar and their coach more specifically. So yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, that's all totally fair. With LA Edmonton, man, it's really Connor and Leon against the world. Evan Bouchard a bit. He was great, especially in Game 4. But it really goes to show how great Connor and Leon continue to be. That's why I took the Oilers in 7, man. I'm like, until they can beat Connor and Leon in a 7-game series, I'm just going to take the Oilers. But It's been a really fun series to watch. I'm excited to see if St. Louis can bounce back in Game 6. I still need to see Connor Hellebuck play a lot better for Winnipeg. I don't really trust him still in the playoffs. His road record, especially in the playoffs, is what it is. He especially struggles on the road, gives up basically 4 goals a game at this point. But there have been some good series so far, some absolute duds. But hey, really looking forward to what should be a pretty competitive second round. But Jesse, thank you so much for coming on today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Really appreciate it. Don't worry, people. Pat will be back on Friday once his power's back, and then we'll discuss everything relating to the Penguins. But Jesse, do you have anything to plug before we let you go here? Any new mixtapes coming out? Anything like that?
I dropped a Philip Hollander one yesterday, so that's fresh for consumption. And I think I did an entire James Higgins mixtape that I lost, but I have recovered it only without sound. So you'll have to deal with that. But that's coming out probably Monday. Probably be the Higgins day.
Hey, that's all great, and we're looking forward to watching that one. And then, yes, very glad that Philip Hollander is back, and definitely check out that mixtape from Jesse as well, people. So remember, people, Jesse, we'll try to have him on once a week if his schedule allows it throughout the offseason as well. But for Jesse, I'm Hunter Hodies. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We both appreciate it, and Pat and I will be back with another episode for you all on Friday.